Hi, and welcome back to Wake Up Canada News. I'm Brad Wilder. Today on the show, Wayne Sturby, leader of the Manitoba Party, is with us as we discuss one of the largest school divisions here in Manitoba violating their own policy, trespassing all over the rights of concerned parents and local citizens. Wayne, thanks a lot for being here today. I understand you received a letter recently from the Louis Riel School Division and their legal department, which comes from David A. Simpson of Fillmore Riley. And it would seem as though they are going to go ahead and, I guess, make the threat of charging you with trespassing should you ever show up on their property. So let me just preface this by reading, their document that they sent to 35 parents here in Manitoba. Dear Sir or Madam, in regard to the above matter, we are writing to advise that on June 20th, 2023, you attended a regular board meeting of the Louis Riel School Division and caused a disturbance and or participated in the creation of a disturbance on division property. The division has obligation to protect students, staff, and families from the aggressive and threatening remarks and behaviors that our community experienced at the meeting. As a consequence, you are no longer permitted at any of the division's properties and or premises. Now, they also attribute the next few paragraphs to 3 different acts, one of them being the Workplace Safety and Health Act, as well as the Public Schools Act, and the Petty Trespass Act. So that, we'll get into that in just a minute. It says here on the page 2, please be advised that you are not to enter nor be on the grounds of any Louis Riel School Division properties at any time unless you have made specific arrangements with the Secretary-Treasurer, Jamie Rudnicki. If you need to reach Jamie, you can contact him at the email provided. Should you be found in breach of this directive, the division will contact the police. We are not going to engage in any further discussion in respect of this matter. If you do not accept our response, please have your legal counsel or yourself, as the case may be, contact the division's legal counsel in writing. Signed, Christian Michaluk. Now, he is the superintendent of schools and CEO. I thought that was rather interesting at the back end of his superintendent of schools title, CEO. That's Chief Executive Officer. I didn't really think we had that. I thought the title was Superintendent of Schools. But CEO puts it into, I guess, a real business sort of form, doesn't it?
Well, Brad, I'm not really sure what the intention of adding the CEO there was, and you might be entirely right. But when I see that, I just take it in the same way that I take the language of the entire letter. This is nothing but a bogus and false narrative that they have created, and there's only one design for that. They're wanting to intimidate those of us who have a contrary point of view. They want to scare us into silence, and so I'm just kind of wondering if they're not trying to even embellish the position of Christian Michaluk to add weight to maybe his authority. I don't know the reasons for that.
Well, mainstream media has embellished on it already. The embellishment starts within the school division, most likely. It could be coming from the Minister of Education here in Manitoba as well and trickles down from the top. But does questioning the authority of the school division in a polite and respectful manner about its actions constitute hate speech?
Well, Brad, that's a really interesting way to begin this conversation. And I think if anybody were to listen to that question, they would find it quite laughable. How could somebody simply voicing their opinion, just because it happens to be a contrary opinion, how could that be considered hate speech? And the danger that we're facing right now in our country, and it's in each one of our provinces, the question is, who becomes the arbiter of what hate speech is? So in a conversation between you and I, if I say something that you disagree with, does that give you now the right to say, Wayne, that's hate speech, and you can't say that just because we have a different point of view? How does that affect debate? How does that affect debate in the House of Commons? How does that affect debate in the Manitoba Legislative Building? How does that affect debate in City Council or in municipal offices or in school division board meetings? How can something that somebody doesn't like, just because you don't like it, be considered hate speech? And I think that most Canadians, Brad, are really smart enough to understand and know that just because we disagree doesn't mean that the person is hateful. As a matter of fact, let me just make this point. The most hateful thing that you can say about an individual is to call them bigoted and racist and homophobic and transphobic when there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever to support those allegations. That in itself is the most hateful thing that anybody can do. And that's what needs to be curbed.
That's the hate speech in all reality. You're right. They're flipping it back on us. And that's the sad part about this. Now, does the school division have legal authority and jurisdiction to ban a living woman or man from the property?
Well, Brad, to a certain extent that they do. If you take and I've read all three acts that you referenced here and that are referenced in the letter, and I've fully acquainted myself with each one of them. And to a certain extent, yes, a school division does have authority to do that, but they also are very clear on the language. What would give them permission or what would give them the authority to do so? So somebody coming onto school property with the intention of causing violence or interrupting a classroom, things that again, the average person, if they were to see this, they would say, hey, that's not right. You can't do that.
That's right.
But coming into a school division board meeting and questioning the school board is not a disturbance, and it's what they're really doing is they're extrapolating certain sections of the language from these particular statutes, these particular acts, and they're overstating their authority.
Absolutely. So can the school division override these rights legally? Okay.
Well, this is where maybe we need to reference. See, in the letter that I received, and I'm not really sure if you maybe I should have I should actually do this. When it comes to the Workplace Safety and Health Act, it says the division has a responsibility to create and maintain a safe working environment that is free from harassment. To that end, policy AC. Now, this is the Louis Riel School Division policy.
Right.
And I've spent a lot of time reading this over. So when we're looking at this particular policy, they clearly reference the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Manitoba Human Rights Code. And listen to this. When they talk about respect for human diversity, it says recognizes the individual worth and dignity of every person. Now, Brad, the last time I looked in the dictionary, every meant every. In other words, there's no exceptions. Yeah. Every person. That would mean a school division, school board trustee. That would mean a concerned parent, a concerned individual who attends the school board meeting. Now, the Manitoba Human Rights Code prohibits unreasonable discrimination based on the following protected characteristics. I'm not going to read the whole list. Anybody can go to this and see it for themselves. But it's the very last, third last. Political belief, political association, or political activity. Now, what we were engaged in was a political belief, political association, and political activity. It's not that we were all from one political party, but we were there to speak our minds politically about something that we're very, very concerned about.
That's right.
And that would also include, Brad, the trustee.
It sure would.
Because it says every person. And so if she has a different political belief, then even if she's outnumbered by the majority, or even if it's unanimously against her, she still has the right to her own political belief.
Realistically, they're bypassing the tough conversations. They don't want to have the tough conversations. They want to provide a dictatorship direct down the middle. This is how it's going to be. without real common sense and real common discussion, which is needed in everything these days, more so than ever now. And when we have the other side, like this school board, acting this way, and again, we question where the directive is coming from. Is it coming from the Minister of Education? Is it coming all the way from Justin Trudeau in Ottawa and Chrystia Freeland? There are all kinds of trickle-down effects here with this whole issue. And the issue, we haven't really touched on the real issue. The issue now has transcended from being upset about what's going on with the pornographic books that are put into our kids' schools at kindergarten and grade 2, and now it's transcended into really a political statement of we're discriminating against all parents, grandparents, anyone who wants to just outright have a conversation with us. So who's doing the banning now? Right?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. You made reference to something that I want to kind of pick up on now too. There is such a lack right now in this country of common sense, common respect, and common decency.
Yep.
Those are things that we need to restore, because we can't have any kind of legitimate debate. Going forward, every concerned parent, every concerned citizen that might have a disagreement with a school division policy, or maybe they have a disagreement with a workplace policy, they can have a disagreement on anything. And if they're going to be threatened and intimidated to shut them up, we're in a very dangerous situation.
Well, let me just, I agree with you 100%. And I think that that's exactly where the term stakeholders comes in, because they are eliminating one portion of the stakeholders, which is the parents. And
absolutely,
as you do that, obviously you create division, you create divide, and they think it's the other side doing that, your side in a sense, that is, opposing this ideology and going in there and wanting to have the tough conversation. I mean, there are a lot of ways to go about this. And, the group of individuals, the 35 people who have been cited with trespassing, should they ever set foot on the Louis Riel School Division again, are in a position now that where do they go from here? Like, what happens to them? Are they just obliterated? They can't go. I know one particular mom has a handicapped child, and she's concerned because now when her handicapped child goes to school, she won't be able to be on the property to even pick them up or help them out of the school. Those kinds of things are going to be affected by this lack of transparency, lack of understanding that the parents are the stakeholders by the school division, and even the Minister of Education here in Manitoba might as well include his ass in the mix too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, the school division trustees in Manitoba are voted in to represent community stakeholders and have regular meetings. That's what we vote them in for. We are the stakeholders. Right. We vote them into power. Are these trustees independent, or are they within jurisdiction of the school board now?
That is maybe the $64 million question. And that particular issue really encompasses all levels of political activity. So you could be elected as an MP in Ottawa, you could be elected as an MLA in Manitoba, you could be a councillor, a city councillor in Winnipeg, a mayor, you could be a school division trustee. And when you go and ask people for their support, they're basically voting for that individual, hoping that that individual is now going to represent the needs and the concerns of that constituency. But all too often, what happens is, and it happens at every level of government again, that person who was elected finds themselves subject to the higher authorities of that political party, or in the case of a school division, it's not a political party, but you're subject to maybe the majority of the board, the wishes and the whims of the chairperson. The chairperson wields a great deal of authority, as we have seen with the Louis Riel School Division. And
Sandy Nemeth, let's make sure we mention her name, Sandy Nemeth.
Absolutely, yeah. Sandy Nemeth. And some of the other board members, I'm not going to mention their names, Brad, but that's fine. The people can find that out too. Yep. There's been plenty of discussion about that. but the way that they treated one of their school trustees who was doing the very best job that she could to represent the concerns of her constituency, the people that she asked for their support, clearly saying what she wanted their support to do. She wanted to safeguard the interests of the parents and the children in the school division. And for that, she was bullied.
So I guess a school board can prohibit a trustee from using freedom of speech and peaceful protest. And now that sounds like tyranny and communism to me, Wayne.
I can't disagree with you, Brad. And it reminds me of a time in history when in the United States and Eugene McCarthy was going about looking for communists everywhere until finally somebody in the Senate oversight said, Mr. McCarthy, have you no shame? And I'm just kind of wondering, Brad, when it comes to this particular school division and the Board of Trustees, have they no shame? Their own policy, and it's online. People can go and look at it, and it talks about bullying. Bullying is defined as behavior that is intended to cause or should be known to cause fear, intimidation, humiliation, distress, or other forms of harm to another person's body, feelings, self-esteem, reputation, or property.
Right.
How can they not see that what they have done is become guilty of violating their own policy because they are the bullies? And you know what? When I worked for the government of Manitoba, I went through that for a period of years. I know what bullying looks like, I know what it feels like, and I know how hard it is to combat that.
So a school board unilaterally making legal decisions such as banning a parent or a trustee from property for freedom of speech or peaceful assembly without legal authority is wrong.
Well, absolutely. And I think one of the things that the school division has very artfully set aside and neglected when they created their own policy on discrimination and whatever you want to call it, they simply refer to it as policy AC. But when they note that the act or the policy itself is built upon the foundation of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Manitoba Human Rights Code, those two very acts supersede any policy that the school division has. So if they think that they can somehow trump up an excuse and deny people access to school division property just because they don't like that individual, and yet they don't understand that when a person is exercising their free speech, and Brad, again, we just have to emphasize it's every person. It's not there aren't exceptions to this. So if a school board trustee is exercising her free right to free speech, social media or inside the boardroom, that is free speech.
It's protected.
And you cannot deny that. And you cannot punish somebody for exercising that right.
That's right. We're protected, obviously, and allowed 100%. And we can't give that up now either. Canada's slipping, as we know, and we can't let that fall now. That's the one thing that we need to maintain a grasp on is our freedom of speech and our ability to communicate and have those tough discussions along the way. So one thing now, Wayne, we're getting close to wrapping up, but what is due process in this situation of banning a parent or trustee from freedom of speech and peaceful assembly on its property? What is this due process in this situation? Are they going to really go ahead and charge everybody with trespassing if they show up September the 5th to the next school board meeting?
Well, Brad, that is a great way to sum up this conversation and to end it. We're going to end on this particular note. There's two things that they have failed to do. One is they have failed to be transparent about how they arrived at this decision. They haven't provided any evidence whatsoever, no affidavits, no video evidence of any kind. And we know that that particular board meeting was videotaped by the school division. They have access to it. They can make it public. They can show and prove the allegations that they're making. We know that we have evidence on our side. There's all the people who attended. Each one of them would swear out an affidavit talking about how the conduct of that meeting went. And I know I would do the same thing. Yep. So there's no transparency, but maybe even bigger is what you said, and that is due process. In our judicial system, whether we're talking about the Supreme Court of Canada or whether we're talking about the lowest forms of judicial process, we have what they call administrative tribunals, which is what the school division is. It's not it's a quasi kind of a court. They're allowed to make decisions and exercise discipline when it's necessary, but it's not unbridled. It's not unmitigated. They still have to abide by the principles of natural justice and due process. And when you take a look at those two fundamental things that are they're the bedrock, really, of our judicial system, if something takes place where there is clear bias or where there is not fairness and where there is due process, there's no question that the way that this letter is written and how they have conducted themselves from the very beginning, there has been a complete lack of due process. I mean, Brad, it's a dead giveaway if you just take a look at the second page of the letter. We are not going to engage in any further discussion in respect to this matter. So they're saying, we've made a decision, we've closed the book, you've got nothing to say, you have nothing to contribute, we're not interested in anything, in any evidence that you might submit that's contrary to what we've already determined. There's no due process here.
Sure, so a fair hearing is going to require a party with no bias. Exactly. Who or what entity would provide that fair hearing under these circumstances to even satisfy the parent or this concerned citizen like yourself?
Well, Brad, now when it comes to administrative law, this is an area of law that I have spent a great deal of time really looking into, not only for myself, but on behalf of a few other people. We're going back now almost a decade when I first got into it. But absence of bias is not determined by the people who sit on the administrative board. Absence of bias is determined by the person who's being subjected to it. If that person says, no, I am totally convinced that you are biased.
It's sort of like picking a jury, right?
Pretty much, yes. So, the school division has exercised authority that does not belong to them. They have exaggerated what they think does belong to them. They have created a false narrative. They haven't provided any evidence to substantiate. There's been no fairness. There's been no due process. There's no transparency. And every one of those things, put it all together, and it comes down to one thing. They are bullies. They have bullied individuals. They're bullying the parents now, the 35 people who attended and who have now received the letters. All they want to do is shut us up and make sure that we are not allowed to express our Charter of Right guarantee of free speech.
Well, I will never let you tip your hand or your hat going forward. I wish you the best of success with this. I hope that it goes in a manner where the tough conversation is had, whether it's with their legal team or whether it's with them themselves, the school board from here in Manitoba. Wayne, thank you very much for being on the show. This was enlightening for a lot of parents, a lot of grandparents, a lot of moms and dads that just don't understand. They're sitting at home going, well, I only showed up to a school board meeting. Now they're sending legal teams after me to prosecute me on trespassing. And these people are scared and they're confused just like others. But it's because of individuals like yourself who know the law, who know the real situation at hand. And you're going to be able to provide some of that guidance for them just from being here today. So thank you very much for being here. Again, continued success moving forward and all the best in the upcoming election as we get ready to wind up politics even more here in Manitoba.
All right, Brad, it's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for giving me this chance to speak freely on this matter.
You're very welcome. I'm Brad Wilder. That's it. This is Wake Up Canada News. Remember, you're the voice. It's time to make it count. I'll see you next time.